Yes, indeedy, folks. It's the Beer Drinker's Guide to the Great Wahoo!
Folks, it's that time of year again. Yes, it's time for Boise Music Week. Boise Music Week, a tradition since 1919. That makes this one the 91st year. If you use the magic Google thing and look up National Music Week, you'll find that the National Federation of Music celebrated the first official National Observation of Music Week in 1924, with 452 towns and cities participating across the United States. You'll also find that the tradition started from a 1915 National Week of Song. By 1917, Music Trades Review mentioned Music Week for the first time. Our googly adventure then mentions the year 1919. And under 1919, the National Music Week website says, First City Observance, Boise, Idaho. My research found this ad that was published many years after 1919. The ad was talking about Idaho history, and it mentioned that Eugene B. Farner asked the question, shall we make this an annual event, through his megaphone, with which he conducted the community singing at Boise's first Music Week. The time was 1919. The place, Capitol Park in front of the State House. The name of the event was then Civic Festival Chorus Plan. The response to Mr. Farner's question was, yes, we shall. Here's a shot from 1924 of the crowd sitting on the Capitol steps watching the musical productions on Capitol Park. A large temporary stage was set up about where the Studenberg Memorial is now. Here's a photograph looking from the stage area back to the crowd in the same year. I like the way the Statesman laid out this page to make a big to-do about the music. Music Week was primarily performed on this stage in front of the Capitol building until after World War II. The second year that Boise produced Music Week, it put out this program. The cover of this program was actually a light green. Unfortunately, the Idaho Historical Society does not have a color copier. The interior of this program had 16 pages. A lot of those were words to songs. There were also discussions of the different events. One page covered all the different activities that were going on between Sunday, May 30th, and the next Saturday, June 5th. The Saturday event began at 9 p.m. It was called the Feast of Light and Song. It was commented, it will not be complete without you. The Feast of Light and Song came to be known as the Lantern Parade. School children throughout the valley would make lanterns and walk down the street singing with their lanterns. It must have just been fantastic. This Statesman article from 1924 shows lanterns made by the children of Central School. At the time, Central School was a block or two behind the Idaho Capitol building. The Lantern Parade became a favorite part of the Music Week festivities. Unfortunately, the Lantern Parade is a rather difficult thing to stage. All those kids with candles, heck, even today with flashlights, are pretty hard to keep organized. This article from 1931 celebrates the fact that there is going to be a resurrection of the Lantern Parade. Last year, we had a Lantern Parade for Music Week. This year, we are not having one. Apparently, it's one of those things that is just very, very difficult to put on. Lantern Parade or not, Music Week went on. Here, from 1926, we see grade school students being prepared for a pageant called a spring garden. Miss Judith Mahan must have been a very patient woman. By 1932, it was observed that it is pleasing to note that the precedent Boise started in observing Music Week is being followed by a great many cities in the country, and the movement is now national. There are several things that have always made Boise Music Week unique. The first and foremost of those is that all events of Boise Music Week are free to the public. It was a principle of Music Week in 1919, and in every 91 years since then, that every event is free to the public, just so people can enjoy the celebration of music. The second unique feature of Boise Music Week is that it is all entirely done by volunteers. No one anywhere in Boise Music Week makes a dime off of it. That's part of why we can keep it inexpensive and free to the public, and it is also a matter of pride to the artists of all different disciplines that it takes to put on these shows. Over the years, Boise Music Week has continued to change. The Lantern Parade comes and goes. The International Dance comes and goes. In 1959, Boise Music Week began a new tradition that has been kept up ever since. That tradition is the production of Broadway musicals. Since 1959, the only time the tradition of having Broadway musicals for Boise Music Week has been broken was in 1966 and 67, when they had variety nights. For years, these musicals were performed on local high school stages until the construction of the Velma Morrison Center. Velma Morrison has always been very supportive of Boise Music Week, and she, along with the board of the Morrison Center, have always been very helpful in getting the Music Week productions onto the stage in the center. This year's Broadway musical is this lady right here. Yes, folks, this year you can come and see the singing, the dancing, the silliness that is Hello, Dolly. It turns out that this year your beer drinking guide to the Great Wahoo has snuck in to the production of Hello, Dolly, just to see how it all gets done. Rehearsals started February 1st. And how friendly could they start? Here was the leading man holding open the door to South Junior High when we met for our first read-through. What a chaos. Nobody knew any parts. Many of us didn't even know the music or had ever heard it. There were scribbles and notes on pages. There were all kinds of people who had never met. It's no wonder the musical director has to be a tyrant. Well, not really. Actually, Linda's a sweetheart. But she does make sure things get done right the first time. As she pointed out, why practice them wrong? The first meeting was a read-through of the show. The second meeting, we began singing. By the third meeting, they had us up doing some dancing steps. All of these meetings at South Junior High were very pleasant, but unfortunately, there was not the room that we needed to block out the staging. They were frantically looking for a warehouse. They kept telling us how cold and without facilities the last warehouse had been. Finally, we got great news. The Overland Park Shopping Center up by the freeway had an empty space they were willing to let us use. It sounded real cozy compared to a big, drafty warehouse. It even had bathrooms. After a day of cleaning off the dust, we settled in to the business at hand. I haven't been in a production for years. I hope these photos give you a sense of the utter chaos that seems to reign supreme so much of the time. Yet, despite the chaos, very, very quickly, we began to see the show come together. As we began to put scenes into other scenes, we began to realize how the whole thing would stitch together into an actual production, into a story. While the group can be quite coordinated during an actual production song in the rehearsals, the second the director calls stop, it all dissolves once again into chaos. As is typical in any production, much of the time is spent sitting and waiting, and waiting, and waiting, while other people rehearse their parts. Rehearsals began February 1st. At first, it was only a couple days a week for an hour and a half or so a day. Approaching April, we'll be rehearsing every night and late into the night. By March 22nd, this is how one scene in a restaurant looked. Well, folks, I know it still looks like the chaos reigns supreme. That's just what rehearsals look like. The crew will not get together with the set until one day before the show. They'll go through a dress rehearsal when finally everything, the orchestra and everything will be there. The crew will be practicing with a piano up until the next to the last day. There are so many things that are done just simply under the glaring fluorescent lights of a warehouse, of a storefront. And that's fine. It's all chaos, and every time that it gets worked on, it just gets a little better, and a little better, and a little better. But while we were coming up with what you just saw, we had also been talking with the costume people. And I had watched a few of the ladies dressed up in their frilly fine dresses. If you looked real close, if you were actually wearing these clothes to church, people might look at you and say, you should learn how to sew. But when you're looking at it from a stage, they'll look beautiful. I was watching this little song and dance. I have nothing to do with this scene, and so it's the first time I'd seen it. And I was watching this little song and dance, and I was thinking of the girls in the costumes that I had seen. And I got to thinking of the music being from an orchestra instead of from a piano. And all those musicians, perhaps 50 of them, I don't know how big the orchestra is, all of them accomplished artists, all of them doing their best. I thought about the people that are busy working on the lighting, even though they haven't seen the show. They're working on the lighting because they have a sense of what will be going on and what will work with the costumes and what will work with the mood of the song. All of them artists. I thought about the people building the costumes, and I thought about the sets being all done. So instead of a wall, there'll be pictures of the interior of a dining room in this particular case. And I watched these people who only weeks earlier, or well, a couple months earlier, sang through these songs for the first time and had never done any of the steps. And they were here, and they had 6 more weeks to go of rehearsals and routine, going through it and going through it and going through it and going through it until you're sick of it. But you go through it again because every time you go through it, you remember a step and you practice, and it gets to where your body is doing it, you're not thinking about it. And your mouth is singing the words and your soul is singing the songs, and you're not thinking about it. You're not trying to remember them anymore. Your body is just doing them. 6 more weeks of rehearsals. The costumes will be on. The lights will come up. And the orchestra will begin to play. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be magic. And now that you have seen the rehearsals, now that you've seen a little glimpse of the rehearsals, check it out. Check it out. Go and see it. And I'll bet that you're halfway through this song, your heart just singing it. Wow, this is so beautiful. And you'll remember, oh yeah, this is what those people were stumbling through in the warehouse. It really is fun to watch it come together. And I think that you will find it absolutely stunning to go enjoy. Here's some information on the tickets. They're free. This year's Boise Music Week production of the Broadway musical Hello, Dolly runs Wednesday through Saturday, May 5th through the 8th, beginning at 7:30. On Saturday, there are actually 2 performances, one a matinee at 2 o'clock. As we've seen, all events for Boise Music Week are free to the public. So is the show Hello, Dolly. However, there are some events for Boise Music Week that you do need tickets for. These events include both the concert showcase on Monday night and the International Dance Showcase on Tuesday night at Timberline High School, and the production of Hello, Dolly. This year, Music Week begins Friday, April 30th, with School Night. Be watching the Beer Drinker's Guide to the Great Wahoo on Thursday, April 29th, for a complete list of all the activities coming up in Music Week 2010. In the meantime, this coming week is the time to make sure that you get tickets for the events you want to attend. The tickets are free. Watch for next Wednesday's Idaho Statesman, Wednesday, April 14th. There's a coupon for the Boise Music Week Productions that you can clip out the coupon and send it in with a self-addressed stamped envelope. That's all you have to do to get your tickets. One exemption are the tickets for the senior show of Hello, Dolly on Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock. These tickets are available at senior centers around the area and at many care facilities. The tickets also cover an escort for our senior citizens. And whether you get a ticket or not, don't give up. Just go wait and see if you can get in. If you want to see the Broadway musical at the Morrison Center, it's best to try during the week, say Wednesday or Thursday. Fridays and Saturdays tend to be quite filled up. 15 minutes before the show, seats that have not been claimed by ticket holders will be given to those who are standing and waiting. So, if you do have a ticket, make sure you get there on time. Boise Music Week. What a grand tradition. And what an excellent way to celebrate spring. Come and enjoy the events this year. Better yet, go to boisemusicweek.org and see how you can volunteer. It's really fun. I just like this so much. Let's watch another minute or so of it. When I got to looking at the Boise Music Week website, I noticed a couple of quotes about music that I really enjoyed. The first of these quotes is from Lewis Thomas. Lewis Thomas was obviously talking from back in the 70s when we were sending the Voyager spacecrafts out past the planets and into deep space. We had included recordings of different sounds from the Earth. Mr. Thomas says, "I would send the complete works of John Sebastian Bach into outer space on the Voyager spacecraft." Mr. Thomas concludes, "But that would be boasting." The second quote is from Ernest Newman. Ernest Newman seemed to particularly enjoy oratorios. Oratorios are large-scale musical works for orchestra and voices. They are grand performances, usually without the use of costumes or scenery or action. They are typically narratives on a religious theme. Handel's Messiah and Bach's Christmas Oratorio are typical of these narratives on religious themes. Mr. Newman seems to think that these oratorios should be performed in costume. Says he, "If I had the power, I would insist on all oratorios being sung in the costume of the period." Mr. Newman does make an exception. He says, with the possible exception of the creation. And that's this week's Beer Drinker's Guide to the Great Wahoo. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you next week. And in the meantime, keep celebrating the Great Wahoo.